Today, we're going to ask you to imagine what it would be like to look forward to Monday morning, to rolling out of bed and running into work for something that you absolutely love to do. And we're going to share Brielle's story of pursuing exactly that in her career transition. This is really the story of Brielle's pursuit of her dream job. And in doing so, we hope that it'll be inspirational for everybody listening, and it will be particularly relevant for anybody who is interested in product management as their career, which is exactly what Brielle is pursuing. As we go through the presentation today, feel free to share questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring. And this is conversational. We want to share as much information, especially as it is relevant to your story, as possible, because I believe it's inspirational, and I hope the audience will as well. My name is Brad Eiben. I'm the Executive Director of the MS in Product Management program here at CMU. And I'm really excited to introduce Brielle, to have Brielle share her story with you. Brielle is one of our current students. She's getting ready to start. She's one semester in, ready to start her internship in about a month, roughly. And it's a great story, and we hope that it's both inspirational and informative for you. With that said, Brielle, can you tell us, I introduced you as a student, but who are you really?
So student definitely describes one of the aspects of who I am today. But thank you, Brad, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here to share my story with everyone. I would say, given my current student status, I've made what I would call a zigzag in my career. A former manager told me that most individuals think of a career transition as this just standard like vertical up and down. You start in one role and you just continuously move up from there. However, it is becoming more and more common that individuals are zigzagging and taking what they've done and building on that and moving into another area, or potentially completely pivoting into something very new based on what their interests are. So my 10-year career, I would say, very much is fitting a zigzag status at the moment. His statement really resonated with me because I had said that my entire career has been a puzzle, that like one piece built into the next into what is like building my story. My bachelor's actually is in accounting. I never spent a professional full-time employment day doing any type of accounting work. However, it did kickstart a very passionate, very successful 10-year career because I started my talent acquisition career in doing accounting and finance recruiting. 6 years and 7 promotions later, I left the first and only company that I ever worked for, global, very established organization, 70 plus years old, to go to a startup company. I wanted something different. I wanted a change. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm actually only less than 2 miles from CMU's campus. And when people think about Pittsburgh, they think of it being this old steel city. They didn't realize that over the last 10 or so years, it's truly become this hot tech town. Google alone has over 300 tech professionals here. Facebook has a lot from more of like a VR aspect here within their labs. We're actually a styling hub for Stitch Fix. Uber's Advanced Technology Center was built here. So I wanted to be a part of that industry, that movement here in my own backyard. So I had the opportunity to transition to startup tech 5 years ago. And that was when I started to see products really being built for people that made their lives better. And that was when I had the chance to wake up and be excited every day to go to work, because I had the chance to build programs or processes that either weren't in existence, or I got to take something that was there and make improvements, ultimately being to make my customers' lives better. I was constantly customer focused. as a recruiter, I had customers as my candidates. They were external customers. I had to be their advocate moving through the process, but I also had to make sure that I was supporting my internal customers with my hiring managers, my interview panelists. So no matter what I did and what decision I made, it had to be with the customer in mind and what was best for them. So that was what ultimately led me to being where I was 10 years. I use this phrase, I'm driven by finding the balance between tech and talent, because that's slightly more polished and saying I'm obsessed with finding a better way for customers. And I really do feel that that's done with innovation, technology, and automation. We have a question.
We do. You've taken big risks of moving from one thing to another. How do you make those decisions? Isn't it scary? Snigdha, you read my mind because that was our next question. So you saw the impact you were able to make at your previous role, but you at some point realized there's something bigger that I can be doing, or there's something maybe where I'm in a lead role or out front making decisions, developing strategy. And clearly you wouldn't be here if that moment of realization was product management for you. So how did you go through that thought process? How did you go through that discovery? What was your aha moment?
So in summer of 2022, I'm sure most of us are unfortunately aware that the industry started to see a ton of layoffs. And given my profession and my career, HR and people professionals tend to get hit first, because when the market is bad, those individuals tend to get laid off. And then when the market's good, they tend to be the last ones hired because they don't need that support until everything else is really staffed up. But the tech in that space is so manual. So when the market is good and those teams have to be extremely staffed, but as soon as it's bad, then they have to, really. So history tends to repeat itself. The data is there to prove that history repeats itself in many different aspects. So instead of those teams going like this, I wanted to somehow, I knew that things needed to change, that if the technology stayed the same that it was, and if the way that teams were staffed and let go was going to continue the way, that someone needed to make a change. So that was ultimately what made me decide I need to make a change for people that love the same profession that I do. Sadly, 1 year and 3 weeks later, in August of 2023, I was impacted in a reduction in force. That happened on a Wednesday. That Friday, I started making very tangible transition plans. Within those 48 hours, one of my aha moments was, and I will get very personal here. My son was watching one of his favorite movies, and at the very end of the movie, the main character says, try to make the world a better place. And in that moment, I turned and I looked at my husband and I said, I have to try. I have to try to make the space in the industry that I love and just that world a better place. I think I need to become a PM. And that was what started a whirlwind of events that led me to being here right now.
I love it, and we've talked about this before, but the motivation in general. But what made you connect the dots that PM is a platform on which I can make this change? And who are you making the world better for? Or
so I had the opportunity, being in talent operations, to work with a bunch of different stakeholders to make improvements for those individuals. So I somewhat already was in a role that allowed me to influence and lead without authority. However, I was still very limited in that change and that influence and authority that I was able to have.
Yeah.
And I knew from being in startup tech that product managers were really the ones driving and leading the forefront to saying, hey, I think we need to make this change. We need to make things better. And they're the ones that are, kind of behind the scenes in developing new products and new services to make people's lives better. So for me, that's better for the company, because if they have products that are able to be more sustainable from a workforce aspect, their leaders are happier, their workforce is happier, their either investors or their board are happier, but then also from, if it's an external product, their customers are happier. So
Yeah. I love I love the source of the inspiration. So it's a Friday afternoon.
Yep.
You're immediately inspired. How do we get started? What does the procedure, the process look like?
So I had a unique opportunity that I already knew about the MSPM program. Because of being in startup tech and talent operations and recruiting for 5 years, I was able to build campus recruiting programs and had spent time here on campus at Carnegie Mellon recruiting software engineering interns. And in 2019, I had a female walk up to me and physically put her resume in my hand. And she was an MSPM student, and she said, I know you don't have any interns for PMs, but I just wanted you to be aware of the program. And I went back to my company and I told all the tech leaders that there's this PM program at CMU. If we ever start onboarding PM interns, I think this is where we need to go, because we also did data science interns as well as software engineering interns. So if we were going to expand from a tech aspect, it logically made sense to me to come here. So right away, I started doing research on the program here. That Friday, I signed up for the ACE the Application webinar that Carrie, that is a director in our master's admissions program, does run. And then I also knew from hiring product managers that most of them start with more of a technical background before they transition to product. And with my background, I did not have the technical skill set that I knew if I got accepted into the program that my cohort peers were going to have. So I also signed up for a 10-week Python programming course that was luckily also ran through Carnegie Mellon University professors. And the third thing I did on that Friday was reached out directly to admissions to schedule a local campus tour.
Cool. Now you talked about sort of a self-assessment in terms of the technical skills, but what skills along the way, even as we sit here today, have you realized that you developed without even necessarily knowing that they were PM skills?
I'm still finding out daily being here that there are things I've done that are more PM related than I realized. One of the things that any recruiter has to do is they have to know how to create a job description. So I was very familiar with looking at job descriptions all across different, job boards, from LinkedIn to Built-in and Indeed, and finding, what does a PM job description look like, so that I can see what is a hiring manager or company looking for in a PM, that maybe I can figure out, hey, I actually did something like that. Mm-hmm. Because part of the application process is making your resume look like, why should they say, yes, you're going to become a successful PM after this? So I realized that things I did in talent acquisition and operations was I ran A/B testing on finding a better email campaign to build a more diverse tech team. We did market understanding to build compensation levels for different markets. So doing those basic things, I'm like, hey, this is a PM aspect just from a talent standpoint. So, more questions.
I think that's a general one. We're joining from Pittsburgh. It's a good break in the action here. Kind of getting back to, so you realized, oh, I've done a lot. And honestly, I remember our first discussion is you didn't have to stretch to illustrate a lot of the transferable skills that you brought in on day one. Now, as it relates to, okay, we know some of the things you prepared in terms of the technical competence. What hurdles remain psychologically or otherwise?
Imposter syndrome was first and foremost the one, I would say. The campus tour that I scheduled, I remember walking here to the Tepper building and thinking, oh my gosh, this is the most important interview without it being an interview that I'm ever going to have. Why did I think that someone from CMU was going to think that I was CMU material and that I'm someone that they would want to accept into this program? Fast forward after our meeting, I'm walking out of here thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what the heck I just said that made him think that I could do this. Now I have to actually put down on paper what I said I can do. Then, month and so later, even after I was accepted, I openly told Vanessa, who's our career counselor here, I would say from a like recruiting and full-time search aspect, she told me to do some things to my resume. We had a date that I was supposed to get it done. I will admit I was late on that date, and I told her, I said, I truly have imposter syndrome right now because in trying to tailor my resume to the recommendations that you and I talked about, I can't help but think, why would a recruiter look at my resume and want to hire me? If I was the recruiter looking at my own resume, I would say, no, I'm not going to hire this person to be a PM intern. And that was what was holding me back mentally from doing what I needed to do. And when I told Vanessa that, she said, a recruiter can't reject you if they don't even know that you exist. So
True.
That was the only thing that she needed to tell me to eliminate that imposter syndrome. And I'm like, she's so right. And from that moment, I'd say a few weeks later, I had applied for probably close to 30 internship job postings, which was a significant difference. And then even whenever I was getting the rejection emails, I thanked her for telling me that because I knew it meant that somebody actually was looking at my resume. And I was happy that she helped me get over that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, rejection is a necessary step to success, unfortunately. Yes. As a former recruiter, you can relate to that maybe more than anybody. So it was a little bit of external nudging or explanation of the guidelines to help you find it within yourself to say, okay, this is within my control, at least to some degree.
Yes, definitely. They can't even reject you if they don't see you. Just the very direct feedback, because I do very well with direct feedback. I will say that from where I grew up and my family and how like friends and family acted, I'm someone that tends to do well with like tough love. So if you just tell me that way, I am more than likely going to then be like, okay, and change and go.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and I do have to say that at 2 p.m. Eastern today, one of our alumni is going to give a presentation on exactly that. So if you're interested, tune into Sadhana Gupta's presentation later on today. It'll be excellent. I've seen a version of it before. It would have helped actually 6 months ago.
Probably.
But so you mentioned support from Vanessa in the Career Center. What other sources of either motivation or support have you leaned on, both in making the decision, because it's not a small decision, or even throughout the way in executing on it and up to this point, and even up to preparation for your internship?
So prior to being here, I very much leaned on my relationships. I leaned on a bunch of individuals that I had prior professional working relationships with, to either tell them, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I want to do and transition my career. And every single individual, thankfully, that I talked to fully supported it. And they're like, if you can get into CMU, go for it. Like, run as fast as you can in this direction. I think you're going to do amazing. I also leaned on my own personal friends and family on, hey, what do you think about this? And they were very supportive. I leaned on that network and doing my application, because I knew that I had such a unique background. I'm not the traditional profile for someone to transition into PM. So I needed to do everything that I could do to tell the best picture of my overall story, with any aspect of the application. So part of that was the letters of recommendation. I reached out to a former individual that reported to me for several years and asked her if she could write a letter on my leadership style, because you have to be a strong leader as a PM. I reached out to a current VP of engineering that he went from candidate to hiring manager, so had that external customer experience and the internal customer experience. So I asked him to write a letter on how I am with my candidate or customers so that he knew and could describe that aspect. So I made sure to lean on my people for encouragement, but also be able to help me share my story. And then same thing here internally, like Vanessa helps me be able to find a way to share my story on paper. I tell everybody, don't do what I do, but if I need you to help me share my story and get out there, I just run up here and knock on your door to see if you're in your office. So the staff here is incredibly supportive in helping us get to where we need to go. It's just, you have to ask, you have to reach out to those relationships and ask.
So in terms of making a career transition, especially after being well established, who do you think needs to hear this message? Who needs that encouragement, or that what types of people do you think are need to at least consider following your footsteps?
People that constantly want to make things better, regardless of how small or how big that is. People who look at something and maybe go, all right, so this has been going well. We've been doing it this way for, X amount of time, but maybe we could do it this way. And then having a reason behind that. You can't just do something like you're trying to throw spaghetti on the wall and hope that it sticks. You have to actually have data behind why you're saying that you need to look at something. You have to be organized, but also be able to be flexible within the ambiguity, which is basically talking out of both sides of my mouth and saying that you have to be flexible but organized at the same time. But that's what a PM has to do.
Right.
You have to be someone that is open and transparent with communication for every stakeholder, for every team member, for anyone. That's important here at academia, especially with the amount of group assignments we do. But I think it's even more so important. What we do here, we're training to do out in the real world. Yeah. So
I call it a training program, not an academic program. Speaking of the program, it's half female.
Yeah.
How has that contributed to your growth? How's that environment in terms of, especially in contrast with a lot of the, let's just say, male-dominated workplaces that you've been in the past?
That was a huge selling point for me in wanting to be here within the program, because spending the last 5 years in the tech industry, a big thing that is not unknown by any means or is a secret is that there is a significant gender imbalance from a tech professional aspect. And I was not uncommon to being the only female in a room of a bunch of really talented, very strong, opinionated male software engineering leaders. And when you're in a room with individuals like that, sometimes you think, what am I going to say that's going to make them listen to me? But the reality is that I had to always position myself as being a subject matter expert in talent acquisition and the candidate space, whereas I was never going to tell them this is how they needed to code. That was crazy. So when I positioned myself as a subject matter expert, is how that dynamic worked. However, I still didn't love being the only female in that room. So knowing that I was going to be in a program of other like-minded women in tech that were tech professionals that wanted to make an impact in the world as a PM, and not be the only female voice in the room, that was a huge selling point to me.
Good. So you're getting ready for the internship. Mm-hmm. What do you love most about the journey so far up to this point, and what are you looking most forward to in your internship?
I'm really excited about my internship because one of the things that has been described to me about how Rocket Mortgage operates is that they move very quickly. My manager told me that I will be testing things quite frequently, that one of their values is take the turkey out of the oven. And it means you have to ship something. Like, you can't just reiterate something over and over and over and over again. Like, it's time to just do it. So I'm excited because I am going to have the opportunity to actually work on a product that is going to help customers. So I'm tangibly going to be able to say that I have experience as a PM. And part of what is allowing me that opportunity is the experience and the learning that I've had here at Carnegie Mellon. When I was talking to my hiring manager, he liked my background because of my recruiting aspect. It's a digital product management internship role where a lot of what his team does focuses on the customer website interaction. So funnel conversion, click rates, A/B testing for marketing and emailing campaigns. And that's a lot of what I did in recruiting. You look at funnel conversion rates to see who's going from the first interview stage all the way down to the bottom. I did A/B testing with sourcing. And during my interview, he asked me about how the program is designed. And so when he learned that it was interdisciplinary between the Tepper School of Business, the School of Computer Science, and also focusing on the HCI School of Design, he was extremely interested and impressed with the CMU, just training and knowledge and reputation. And then he asked me, given CMU, do you have any AI classes? And I said, yes, I do. Actually, I am developing my curriculum to be more AI focused. I have a design of artificial intelligence products right now. And from that sentence alone, from learning AI here at CMU, he then said, I actually have 2 interns that I get to hire. One of them gets to build an AI chatbot. I'm just going to put you on that product because I think you're going to have a lot more fun on that. So I would not have had that opportunity if it wasn't for what CMU was able to provide to me. So my background got me the interview, but what I'm learning here is what ultimately got me the really, really cool product that I get to work on this summer.
That's great. That's great. Any questions in the audience? Feel free to share. We're near the end of the time, but we can take a few perhaps. Let's see if there. Okay. Doesn't look like there are any live questions right now. That said, how can people connect with you?
So please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Brielle Irving. Or if you are also interested in finding out more about the MSPM program here at CMU, you can also go to the CMU website and look at the MSPM ambassadors. And then my email address is going to be available in my ambassador profile. It's baudino@andrew.cmu.edu. So given that, why I'm suggesting to look on the ambassador profile, but very easy to connect with me on LinkedIn. So please do so.
And the same goes for me. I'm Brad, E-I-B-E-N. I'm the only one that works at CMU by that name, so I'm easy to find. Looks like we might have. Are there any programs you would suggest elsewhere, another state? Interesting question. There aren't. The MS in product management is unique because it's focused. There are other innovation and MBA style, tech MBA style programs that are not what I would say as focused specifically on product management, which for us, it's in the name, right? So I would say, here's how I would respond to that question is there's a product for everybody, right? This program is specifically for people who want to invest a year, want to spend time in Pittsburgh, and know for certain that product management is where they want to be at the end of the road. I would suggest just asking those questions, and if you're not all in on product management, then maybe this is not for you. If you're more general business oriented, then a traditional MBA, something along those lines. More data oriented, maybe business analyst. It's really a matter of there's not a broad answer to a question quite like that, unfortunately. And before I forget, again, I'll remind everybody at 2:00, one of our alums, Sadhna Gupta, will talk about imposter syndrome, her experience, her story, overcoming it. It'll be a fantastic presentation. That's at 2 Eastern. And for anybody attending this conference, if you're interested in applying, we actually have our round one deadline this weekend, and the application is pretty quick to fill out. So that's not a huge obstacle. And you can use the code WomenTech25 to get a waiver on the application fee. So you can do it at no cost. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.